Amazing saints exposed! How one humble cleaner's touching word silenced 500 wealthy guests. Maria adjusted her apron, the fabric stiff from countless cycles through the wash. Tonight, she stood in the midst of luxury, a glimmering charity gala in Manhattan's most prestigious hotel. The opulence overwhelmed her. As she moved through the crowd, the clinking of crystal glasses and laughter rang out like an iron bell, a constant reminder of how far removed she was from this world. She felt the weight of her responsibilities pressing down harder than ever. Her mother back in Brooklyn depended on her, and the bills didn't care about her fatigue. As she expertly maneuvered around tables adorned with extravagant centerpieces, her heartbeat quickened. Maria loved her job. There was dignity in hard work, but each scrubbing motion was also a reminder of the struggle she endured. In her modest apartment, dishes piled high, and silence weighed heavy like a lead blanket. Tonight, she wished for nothing more than a moment of peace, a reassurance that she was doing enough for her mother. Her mind raced as she caught snippets of conversation from nearby guests. "Look at them," one woman was saying. "All those people in Brooklyn just waiting for a handout." Laughter erupted, each chuckle piercing through her defenses like shards of glass. She could feel her muscles tense, her breath catch in her throat. This ignorant scorn directed at her community, her home, was a heavy slap across her face. "Do they know what it's like?" she thought, feeling the heat rise in her cheeks. The contrast was maddening. Here she was, surrounded by shimmering chandeliers, while her own life felt like a dim candle, flickering its last. It only took a moment for the laughter to ignite something fierce within her. Should she remain invisible? Would they even see her? Or did she dare confront their callousness? Before she could seize the trembling courage brewing inside her chest, she caught the gaze of a nearby group. Their icy stares danced with contempt, utterly dismissing her presence. Loss of resolve crept in as she hesitated, her heart racing with the fear of being rejected, scorned. But those fears twisted into solid determination. "I have to do this," she thought, taking a deep breath that felt heavier than lead. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." As Maria stepped forward, a hush fell over the crowd. She could feel 1,000 eyes on her, each one holding the weight of expectations she never asked for. It was almost suffocating, the pressure to be eloquent, to inspire, to connect, crushing her with the knowledge that looking unworthy would lay her bare before them. What will they think of me? The desperation clawed at her insides. Would they ever know her struggle? With a voice that trembled, she began to share her story. The words flowed as though they were always meant to be spoken, yet doubt surged even stronger. Every time she thought she would overcome her fear, a fresh wave of anxiety pulled her back. As she spoke of her mother's sacrifices, the silence in the room felt heavy, pressing down on her like a vice. As she painted the picture of their lives, Maria could sense the shift, but uncertainty knotted deep in her gut. Would these words matter or fall flat amongst the gilded backs of the elite? Would courage lead to acknowledgement or deeper isolation? The air thickened, charged with unresolved tension, as Maria held her breath, teetering on the edge of a revelation that could change everything. The faces around her slowly transformed. Was it acknowledgement or just shock? As doubts clouded her mind, she realized she stood at a pivotal crossroads, eyes searching for a path amidst the shifting sands of perception. The future loomed ahead, hazy and unknown. Would she step into this new world or retreat back to the shadows? A storm of urgency gripped her heart, leaving the moment pregnant with possibilities and the audience poised for answers they had not anticipated. Maria's heart pounded as she finished her story, the weight of silence hanging like a thick fog. She stood at the edge of vulnerability, her hands trembling lightly at her sides. It was as if she had opened a floodgate, exposing her raw experiences to the very people who deemed her insignificant. The unsettling quiet seemed to stretch eternally, and she felt the eyes upon her, some filled with surprise, others with confusion. Among the crowd, a sympathetic gaze caught her attention. It belonged to a woman in a bespoke gown, with streaks of silver hair gracefully framing her face. There was something genuine in her expression, an understanding that shifted the atmosphere. For a fleeting instant, Maria felt a flicker of hope igniting deep within her core. Could this be a sign of empowerment? Taking a deep breath, she dared to step further into the spotlight, her voice steadier now. She wanted to challenge the misconceptions they held, to remind them that stories like hers were not mere tales of poverty, but of resilience and love. "We're not waiting for a handout," she emphasized, feeling passion surge within her. "We're working, hustling, hoping for a way out." The murmurs began to swell among the guests, and Maria sensed something changing. A few of the wealthy patrons shifted uncomfortably, others whispered openly. Suddenly, the laughter had vanished, replaced by a tension charged with recognition. Some seemed captivated, while others wore expressions of guilt, aware of the disdain they had previously expressed. Yet, the underlying fear gnawed at her. What if she spoke too boldly and faced backlash? What if she'd become nothing more than a fleeting moment of pity in an evening crafted for distraction? The internal conflict twisted like a knot in her stomach. She fought against the urge to retreat again, to disappear among the drapery. As she held the audience's gaze, the truth about her own worth battled with a lifetime of conditioning. Were the voices echoing her community's struggles enough to pierce through the walls of their privilege? Wadamia had always let the judgments of others dictate her narrative, but standing here, there was a flicker of rebellion igniting within her. A question she had pondered many times returned with force. Who was she to settle for anything less than respect? Where once her words had wavered with uncertainty, now they carried an undeniable strength. "I am more than my struggles," she declared, letting the empowerment of those words mold her spirit. "I am my mother's strength, my family's pride. We share a common humanity. Please remember that." The applause started softly, but grew louder as a few patrons stood and clapped. The collective sound of appreciation sent shivers down her spine. This moment was significant, not just for her, but for all those in her life who felt unseen. It was a risk she had taken, and now it seemed to bear fruit. Despite her anxiety, she'd set the stage ablaze with her vulnerability, igniting conversations that had long been avoided. But as the cheers resonated, a new fear began to creep back in, a question of what this newfound validation meant for her. The trajectory of her life could change in an instant, and she felt acutely aware of the dangers that came with recognition. Could she navigate the chasm of privilege that now separated her from the people she once knew? Would they truly open their doors, or would she be left as a mere spectacle for their entertainment? As she contemplated her next move, the gaze of the silver-haired woman lingered in her mind. They exchanged a nod, not one of pity, but of mutual acknowledgement and respect. With renewed clarity, Maria could sense the potential forks in her path, each choice layered with possibilities. The evening swelled around her with newfound energy, but within her heart, unease grew. The world outside of these walls was still harsh, and she knew that with this light came shadows. Would she step into a new realm of opportunities, or find herself lost in the expectations of those who now regarded her? The moment of truth loomed on the horizon, whispering promises and highlighting risks. As a new chapter awaited, Maria stood ready to confront what lay ahead, knowing that the path she chose would be a defining moment. But first, she needed to decide whether to embrace the hands extended toward her or tread carefully back into the shadows she had just begun to escape. Maria's pulse hammered in rhythm with the lingering applause, but the exhilaration soon melded with uncertainty. As the applause faded, replaced by polite whispers, she could almost touch the tension in the air, a mixture of admiration and disbelief, as if they were grappling with an incongruity they had never anticipated. She reluctantly peeled her gaze from the faces of the crowd, scanning the expansive room that once felt so suffocating now seemed to radiate opportunity. The glittering chandeliers sparkling overhead now cast long shadows across the polished floor, each glint illuminating the unknown paths before her. Suddenly, the press of her past felt that much heavier, threatening to pull her back if she didn't act decisively. The silver-haired woman she had noticed earlier approached her, a composed smile gracing her sharp features. There was an invitation in her expression that stirred a mixture of curiosity and cautious hope within Maria. "You spoke beautifully," she said, her voice warm but resonant with authority. "You have a remarkable gift for storytelling. Have you ever considered pursuing it further?" Maria's breath caught. The question flickered like a match in her mind, igniting visions of a life she had quietly yearned for, yet felt utterly unworthy of. Words danced on her tongue, but fear constricted her throat. Could she truly see herself as more than what she had always been? As a cleaner, a provider? Would pursuing a voice in writing or public speaking feel like a betrayal to her origins? She hesitated, wrestling with her own internal narrative, while her heart encouraged her to respond. I've thought about it," she admitted cautiously, her voice barely above a whisper. "But it feels like a different world, one I don't belong to." Her honesty brought a moment of silence between them, almost palpable as the older woman regarded her with something akin to determination. "Belonging is not given, Maria, it's earned," she replied firmly, her gaze piercing. "Your story is not just a representation of struggle, but of hope. Stories that inspire change. I believe in you." Maria's heart swelled with both gratitude and the heavy weight of expectation. Here she stood, on the precipice of daring to dream, and the warm sound of validation wrapped around her like an embrace. The entwined threads of fear and motivation began to tangle within her. What if she could harness this seemingly bizarre validation to build a life that reflected her own truth? But self-doubt churned beneath her resolve. Would the very people who praised her today be willing to listen to her tomorrow, once the novelty wore off? Could she handle the criticism that might accompany attempts to step beyond her role? "I could offer you mentorship," the woman continued, sensing Maria's inhibitions. "Every journey begins with a single step. Consider attending some workshops. Let's explore this together." Mentorship. The word hung tantalizingly in the air, suspended between dreams and realities. A sliver of hope sparkled through her uncertainty. Was it possible that this was her first step toward reclaiming her narrative? Yet another voice whispered in her mind, a dark reminder that pursuing this path could lead to unforeseen conflicts, demanding sacrifices. Would she still remain connected to her roots, or risk losing herself to a world that might reject her authenticity? As her thoughts spiraled, the applause behind her faded completely, serving as a stark reminder of the fleeting nature of approval. The power of a voice, even her own, could shine or shatter. Gathering resolve, Maria took a deep breath, forcing the scattered pieces of her thoughts into alignment. She had ignited a spark, but how she fanned the flames was entirely within her control. "Let's explore this together," Maria said finally, her voice regaining strength. But as the words settled, a new tension gripped her. What if stepping into this new light illuminated darker choices that threatened the very fabric of her identity? The room, while filled with opportunity, felt cloaked in uncertainty and risk. With newfound determination, Maria resolved to navigate the path ahead. But the question loomed larger than ever. Would the spotlight of her ambitions reveal her true self, or shatter the fragile foundation she had built thus far? The evening had been filled with severed ties and potential new ones. As she exchanged contact information with the silver-haired woman, Maria felt as though she were standing at the edge of an emotional cliff, ready to leap without certainty of what awaited her below. All she knew was that the time for hesitation was fading fast, and she would soon have to confront the reality of who she was becoming. Just as she turned to exit the room, a voice pierced through the swell of emotions. Maria! It was someone from her past, an unexpected figure stepping out from the dimness, one she had tried desperately to leave behind. The confrontation she had not anticipated loomed just before her, carrying with it a heavy reminder of everything she thought she had escaped. Frozen in place, Maria's heart raced as she recognized the voice. It was Javier, her former colleague from the cleaning service, someone who had seen her at her lowest and remained a constant reminder of the life she struggled to leave behind. His eyes, once filled with camaraderie, now glinted with something sharper. Disapproval? Concern? "What are you doing here?" Maria managed to ask, her voice trembling slightly under the weight of her own discomfort. This was not the reunion she had imagined when she envisioned stepping into a new life. Javier's expression softened, and with a hesitant step closer, he lowered his voice. "I came to support a friend, but it looks like I found you. You're speaking. Everyone is talking about it. Who knew you had it in you?" His words were meant to be encouraging, yet they reverberated through her with an unsettling clarity. Maria had always feared that her past would haunt her, and standing face to face with Javier brought forth memories she wished to erase. Frozen in place, Maria's heart raced as she recognized the voice. It was Javier, her former colleague from the cleaning service, someone who had seen her at her lowest and remained a constant reminder of the life she struggled to leave behind. His eyes, once filled with camaraderie, now glinted with something sharper. Disapproval? Concern? "What are you doing here?" Maria managed to ask, her voice trembling slightly under the weight of her own discomfort. This was not the reunion she had imagined when she envisioned stepping into a new life. Javier's expression softened, and with a hesitant step closer, he lowered his voice. "I came to support a friend, but it looks like I found you. You're speaking. Everyone is talking about it. Who knew you had it in you?" His words were meant to be encouraging, yet they reverberated through her with an unsettling clarity. Maria had always feared that her past would haunt her, and standing face to face with Javier brought forth memories she wished to erase. Could she truly step into this new identity without the shadows of who she had been lingering closely behind? "I guess I'm trying to see if I belong here," she admitted, shadows of doubt creeping back in. "But why now? You always wanted to elevate yourself, and now I'm just—" "Just what?" he interrupted, a hint of frustration lacing his voice. "Just a cleaner? You're more than that, and you know it. But you have to recognize it for yourself. You think everyone here is beyond reproach? Trust me, everyone has a story, a struggle. You have to own yours." His words cut deep, surfacing her insecurities. She had sat in silence for so long, identified only by her job, her past. Were these people ready for her truth, or would they dismiss her as a fleeting curiosity, a background character in their opulent lives? The silver-haired woman, standing a few paces away, seemed to observe intently, her presence both supportive and intimidating. Maria turned back to Javier, feeling an old defense mechanism kick in. "I'm not sure you get it. This world isn't for someone like me." "Stop." He spoke with a sudden intensity that brought her focus sharply back to him. "You're diminishing what you've achieved. Look around. Do you see anyone else here who's had the courage to share their truths?" He glanced past the sea of suits and gowns, where she saw nods of respect directed toward her. They didn't come from mere entertainment. They were looking for inspiration. She swallowed hard, caught off guard by a surge of pride. Maybe it was possible to claim her own narrative without discarding where she came from. Could she speak to their experiences, however distant they might seem from her own? "I want to know my potential," Maria confessed quietly, her heart trembling with the admission. "But I'm terrified of what it means for my identity. What if I don't live up to their expectations? What if I fail?" "Then you fail, but at least you will have tried. You have a chance to rewrite your story, and that's powerful," he urged, driven by a sense of urgency. "Don't let fear keep you caged. Wings can be clipped by doubt, but you're not a bird without flight." A moment of silence stretched between them as Maria wrestled with the implications of his words. Each breath felt charged with intensity, echoing with the need for clarity. Could she create a new path and still carry the fragments of her past? Javier took a step back, reading her contemplation. "You need to realize something, Maria. You don't have to abandon who you were to become who you want to be." They applauded your honesty tonight. Instead of hiding, you can bring your whole self forward. The pressure of his advice hung in the air, tempting yet terrifying. And suddenly, the prospect of confronting not only her past, but her potential began to crystallize in her mind. With a determined nod, she stepped back from Javier, feeling a mix of fear and focus surging through her. As she turned to reflect on the network of opportunities stretched before her, including the mentorship awaiting her, she understood that this was only the beginning of a new battle within herself. But then, the sound of laughter interrupted her thoughts. Two women nearby were whispering gleefully, clearly oblivious to her internal chaos. The words floated in the air, amplified by the gravity of her uncertainty. "Can you believe she thinks she can actually succeed?" The sting of their judgment struck her like a slap, reigniting the fire in her stomach. Maria felt the tight ball of anxiety morph into defiance. They were the kind of voices she had long wanted to silence, yet here they were, echoing the doubt she had carried for too long. Would she face them head-on, or retreat to the comfort of obscurity? The world around her faded for a moment as Maria faced the crossroads within. The doubts were real, but so was her desire to carve out a new existence. The moment for resolution pressed in on her like a storm, demanding that she take a stand. Standing firm, she whispered to herself, "I can do this." But as courage began to swell within, an internal whisper of doubt lingered. What if she was wrong? The tension enveloping her grew thicker, leaving a sharp edge of uncertainty. With every fiber of her being, Maria braced herself, this time not against the struggle, but for the journey that lay ahead. Would she allow her voice to break through the noise, or would fear drown it out at its inception? As she prepared to step forward, the nagging question remained on her mind. Could she truly embrace her past while pursuing her future, or was she destined to live in conflict with herself forever? With the laughter still hanging in the air, Maria felt the adrenaline coursing through her veins. It tightened her stomach and sharpened her focus, fueling her resolve to break the silence that had long defined her life. The crowd, once a blur of expensive fabrics and glinting jewelry, shifted back into a canvas of possibility, and a small part of her longed to shatter the mundane perceptions that encased her. "Enough," she murmured, as if trying to quiet not just the laughter, but her own fear. This moment could either solidify her identity or drive her back into the shadows she had fought to escape. As she turned to face the two women, their laughter suddenly faded, replaced by a palpable tension. "Excuse me?" she found herself saying, her voice steadier than she anticipated. The two women looked at her, eyebrows raised. She would not be dismissed, not this time. "What do you believe makes someone successful? Is it just wealth, or is it the ability to connect with and uplift those who have struggled?" Their expression shifted from amusement to surprise, and even though she felt a tremor of uncertainty, the words flowed on, each syllable an assertion of her presence amidst their elitism. The first woman scoffed, trying to regain control of the moment. "You think we need a speech? This is just a gathering, dear." Is it, or is it a moment to truly engage?
to look beyond shiny surfaces and see the depth that defines us. The shift in dynamics felt electric, as if the room itself held its breath. They weren't mere spectators, they were participants in her story now. Small groups nearby began to lean in, drawn by her surge of confidence. A ripple effect, she could sense it. Maybe the applause from earlier had ignited something deeper within her, something she didn't know she was capable of expressing. Just because I came from a different world doesn't mean I am less worthy, she continued, heart pounding fiercely. I was often invisible to those like you, living with assumptions and judgments that defined my existence. But you can't blanket a person with a label without also seeing their truth. She could almost see the shift in their demeanor, the defensive armor cracking just slightly. For the first time, Maria witnessed a flicker of understanding in their eyes. Were they capable of seeing her as more than a stigmatized label? As the conversation quieted around her, Javier stood at the periphery, his expression a mixture of pride and astonishment. This wasn't merely about defiance. It was about reshaping the narratives that had long been told through her life and those around her. Maria felt like a tightrope walker, each step an act of vulnerability that could either lead to collapse or liberation. The tension morphed into a curious anticipation, the audience now hanging on her every word. Everyone here has faced their own challenges, their own forms of struggle, and I stand before you, still in pursuit of my own identity. I refuse to let anyone but myself define my worth. With each declaration, the doubts began to retreat. She was no longer just a cleaner. She was an advocate for authenticity, for unity amidst disparity. But as the applause began to thunder around her, a familiar voice pierced the moment. "How quaint," a man smirked from a corner of the room. "But we're not looking for confessions from those who failed." The jibe stung, a reminder that not everyone was ready to embrace her transformation. The ripple she had initiated now threatened to crash against harsh realities. Yet the defiance grew stronger, fueled by the very judgment meant to belittle her. This was not just about her. It was about a reckoning that could inspire change beyond her singular experience. "I haven't failed," she countered, rage and resolve intertwining. "I've learned, and if you can't see the value in that, then perhaps it's your perspective that needs to change." In that moment of confrontation, Maria felt herself poised on the edge of a cliff, undaunted yet perilously aware of the potential for disorder beneath her. This was the moment that would define her, the moment she had both been craving and dreading. What would it take to challenge the ingrained attitudes that so many in the room held? Maria squared her shoulders, ready to tackle whatever pushback would come. The encounter was far from over, and the stakes were higher than she could have imagined. As the room buzzed with murmurs and speculative glances, Maria realized the wind was shifting. She was ready to face it. The confidence she found sparked an urgent question in her mind. How far would she go to dismantle the perceptions around her while ensuring her truth remained unapologetically clear? Her heart raced as she thought of the possibilities. She was ready to keep pushing, to take the next step into this uncharted territory. The tension around her crackled like a live wire, and in that moment, Maria understood that her fight was only just beginning. Would she gain the allies she sought? Or would the weight of doubt bring her crashing down? Maria felt the room draw in closer, each excited whisper an electric current that amplified her courage. She sensed an awakening, not just within herself, but rippling through the attendees, like a shared secret unfolding in real time. This was no longer just a gathering, it was a personal revolution, and she would be the torchbearer. Stepping forward slightly, she locked eyes with the man who had lobbed the insult like a hand grenade. His expression had shifted from amusement to something more akin to indignation, an unintentional acknowledgement of her defiance. His presence, though intimidating, only fanned the flames of her determination.
No, she wouldn't let this moment slip away into the chaos of judgment and discouragement. "Let's talk about failure, shall we?" she said, her voice carrying a newfound weight. She allowed a brief silence to envelop the room, watching as some of the audience shifted uncomfortably. Too often, we conflate failure with worthlessness, but failure is merely a chapter, not the entire narrative. What about resilience? What about the grit that gets us back on our feet time and again? With each carefully chosen word, she felt herself growing less like an outsider and more like an author of her own tale. The delight of engaging the crowd thrummed in her veins, a stark contrast to the insecurity that had clung to her for years. She could see nods of assent ripple through the smaller groups, and the confidence buzzing inside her surged ahead. I chose to rise despite my challenges. The question is, why do we huddle behind labels, lazy assumptions, comfortable judgments? We are not bound by our pasts unless we let them bind us. Going deeper, Maria recalled her struggle with the stigma. Networks that had seemed impenetrable now felt like intricate webs ready to be unraveled. As she wove her narrative of growth, she learned to speak more from her gut than merely reciting rehearsed lines. The crowd had become more than a backdrop. They were potentially
her allies, her champions in this moment. Behind every shiny facade is a story, a struggle, sometimes a painful one. And before you dismiss me, she continued passionately, look within. Are you not also pursuing validation against the tide of expectation? Is success only measured in dollar signs? The man in the corner bristled, the poised arrogance slipping into uncertainty. Maria sensed the shift in the air, the tide turning against disdain and embracing inquiry. For the first time, she saw cracks in the once impenetrable armor of elitism before her. Imagine if we could redefine success, she proposed, her heart clutching her mind as she dove deeper. Instead of a competition of riches, let's make it a coalition of experiences, where the wisdom of struggle becomes our collective currency, where empathy and understanding reign supreme. What if we redefine success as an invitation for collaboration? Her mouth went dry, realization striking her. This was her call to action. She was not merely challenging the status quo. She was offering a new framework, a new way of engaging. The fear soon transformed into an exhilarating anticipation. She could see the potential for connection within the hesitant looks aimed in her direction, could taste it, sweet and intoxicating. But at the same time, doubt lurked behind the walls of many hearts. As the murmurs grew louder, Maria's pulse quickened. She was venturing into uncharted waters. What if she couldn't maintain this momentum? What if they turned on her? At best indifferent, at worst hostile. The stakes were precisely as high as they felt exhilarating. Just as she prepared to fortify her bold stance, she caught fresh glimmers of acknowledgement reflected in Javier's eyes. His support reignited her resolve. This place could become a crucible for change, a platform for not just her truth, but for those who felt similarly marginalized. Each heartbeat echoed the question she was determined to answer. How could she harness this moment? And at what cost was she willing to stake her claim? Her voice rose above the din once again, her final words laden with an unwavering message. You can choose to define success by material means, or recognize the power of human experience, our true wealth. But as her fervent plea sank in, she could feel a looming silence gathering, the anticipation pregnant with possibilities and veiled challenges. Would her impassioned call resonate with any measure of depth, or would it be drowned in the sea of those resistant to change? She'd just stepped into a new chapter of her life, one that teetered perilously between triumph and failure, and a realization washed over her. The outcome was still uncharted. What she discovered that the true worth of her voice resonated just as profoundly in the ears of the wealthy as it did in her own heart. The answer felt imminent, yet uncertain. Maria watched as the echoes of her words settled over the crowd. The charged atmosphere hung like thick fog, and she took a deep breath, desperately trying to dispel the swirling rift. Doubts that threatened to cloud her clarity. They were still, their eyes darting across faces, grappling with thoughts more profound than she dared to imagine. In that fleeting moment, she saw herself back when she had been the silent observer, trembling at the edges of such gatherings. Even now, a sense of vulnerability lingered around her, but this time it was laced with courage. She was redefining what it meant to belong, to speak up, and she felt adrenaline coursing through her veins. That nagging thought returned. Could one moment truly shift perceptions forged over a lifetime? Could her voice pierce through layers of privilege and arrogance? Javier stepped forward, his stature commanding. "Maria, you've ignited something here," he spoke, his words cutting through the silence. "This conversation isn't over. What do you propose?" The question echoed and reverberated within her, touching parts of her that felt neglected not long ago. This wasn't merely performance art. This could be the beginning of something transformational. They needed direction, a tangible path to follow beyond this conversation. Penning down her ideas began to feel like both a challenge and an exhilarating dispatch. What if we create forums for honest dialogue, spaces where our stories are exchanged openly, regardless of our backgrounds? Her internal compass urged her onward. I envisioned collaborative workshops to dismantle preconceived ideas, not to invalidate anyone's success, but to enrich it through shared experiences. She watched the crowd as she spoke, noting how Javier's eyes lit up. Each nod signaled a gradually shifting paradigm, an opportunity in motion. Yet uncertainty simmered beneath the surface. What if her ambitious vision crumbled under the weight of skepticism? Engagement is key. Participation must be authentic and organic. There is so much we can learn from each other about hardship, perseverance, and what drives true fulfillment, she continued, intentionally pacing her words, keenly aware that her own upbringing had armed her with countless lessons. The man who had previously bristled was leaning forward now, curiosity replacing contempt. This wasn't simply about opening a dialogue. It was about doing the actual work, understanding that success was not a singular journey. It was a tapestry of interwoven paths, punctuated by struggles and triumphs alike. But beneath her budding excitement was a stir of trepidation. As exhilarating as this moment felt, could her naivety pave the way for possible failure? What if her ideas were too big, too idealistic, too vulnerable to be accepted in such an elite circle? Yet through all that internal clutter, she sensed her resolve solidifying. These past years of pushing through, fighting to find her voice, they were invaluable experiences, not just for her, but for the greater narrative she aspired to shape. Let's not just seek validation, let us understand our worth. Each of us, regardless of what we've achieved, fits into this intricate web of societies that define us, she declared, heart racing as the clarity of purpose drew nearer. Maria's electrifying pitch elicited murmurs of intrigue, murmurs that led to discussions sprouting around the room.
It wasn't just her energy lighting the space. It was the dawning recognition that they were participating in a genuine shift of perspective. The seed of her vision was being planted. Then her heart dropped as she saw the contours of skepticism pressing back against her ideals. The man from the corner who had once ridiculed her effort now stood, imperiously raising an eyebrow. "So you imagine we can simply rewrite our narratives through dialogue? What guarantees do you offer? What about the ground realities that each of us battles every day?" The room held its breath, the walls seeming to close in tighter. A confrontation loomed on the horizon, and she felt the weight of her moment pressing down with renewed urgency. Would she reaffirm her convictions or falter under scrutiny? As the silence thickened, a profound realization swept over her. This is where true development lay. The challenge wasn't just external, it was the invitation for her own beliefs and ideals to be tested too. Nothing is guaranteed, but if we dare to question the old frameworks, we create the possibility of something beautifully new, she replied, her words steadying. With the crowd's attention verging on anticipation, she could sense the beginnings of a transformative dialogue, one that could redefine her path permanently. Would she become the architect of a conversation that engaged all voices, or would she merely fade away as quickly as she'd arrived? The pulse of potential surged around her, yet the stakes were rising. Clutching the edge of her resolve, the moment demanded one final question from within. How far was she willing to go, and what was she prepared to lose? The answer loomed over her like a spectral challenge. Maria felt her pulse quicken, each heartbeat echoing the weight of that final question. Would she step deeper into this new chapter of her life, or shy away, returning to familiar shadows that no longer felt like home? This moment wasn't merely about the defense of her ideas. It was a crucible designed to forge her conviction right in front of those who had doubted her. The skeptic, still standing, looked ready to provoke further debate. His challenge was piercing, yet inside her grew a fascination. This was not only about acceptance, but about engaging the unresolved tensions that had existed long before her voice had been heard. She could either yield to doubt or stand firm. Defeat was not in her vocabulary. Empowering words began swirling in her mind. What do we truly value in our narratives, she asked, intentionally probing deeper. Isn't each story infused with both triumph and adversity? Our experiences interlace, revealing the complex tapestry of humanity. And in that tapestry, our strength lies not in isolation, but in connectivity. The silence shifted, the crowd leaned in closer, faces alive with intrigue, disbelief, and the faintest glimmers of acceptance. Could her inquisitiveness unravel a perspective that had always been taken for granted? Imagine walking through your life dragging the burden of your past, feeling like an imposter or worse, being dismissed due to a stereotype. Her voice, steady yet impassioned, rose to challenge the very foundations of their privilege. And yet here we are, with a chance to lift those burdens. She was no longer merely a participant in the conversation. She was now its catalyst, the very essence of resilience standing before them. But as she seized her momentum, shadows just beyond the light flitted through her thoughts. What if they laughed again? What if she was stepping too far outside societal norms that dictated who was worthy of attention? The man could choose to dismiss her as easily as he had before, but she shone with newfound hope. What she lacked in worldly success, she compensated with lived experience and passionate belief in the possibilities that lay ahead. This was the innate wisdom she carried, a truth born from understanding struggle rather than merely academic knowledge. Power dynamics are what we should question, not each other's worth, she insisted, her eyes scanning the faces of the audience, searching for connections. Every single one of us possesses something irreplaceable, and we all fight our own battles, don't we? As she spoke, Maria began to see not just spectators, she saw collaborators. Subconsciously, she had tapped into an instinct that was both frightening and liberating. It marked a turning point in her professional journey. This was not about avoiding confrontation, but about engaging with it authentically. She could rewrite her narrative not through passive acceptance of just being a cleaner, but by acknowledging her own intellectual depth and social resilience. Let's make these dialogues about growth rather than limitations, she concluded, injecting conviction into her words. Let's be the architects of dialogues that hold space for every story, stories that challenge our norms and reveal the truth of human experience beyond just status and success. The air thickened as the crowd's energy shifted. Conversations erupted around her, and Maria sensed a palpable excitement.
She wasn't just talking, she was igniting a spark that could light a flame of transformation. But then, against this wave of growth, the real test approached. She felt the burn of eyes fixed on her once again. The skeptical man, though hesitant, lingered. "And what if your vision does not resonate?" His voice, calculated yet tinged with uncertainty, posed a real threat, a challenge that opened the door for emotional exposure. As the stakes mounted, a silent question whispered from within. Was she prepared to confront the possibility of awkward failure in the face of their expectations? Would she dismiss that fear and push through? In that instant, all the walls she had built around her comfort began to crumble. The answer slinked into her consciousness, unwelcomed but undeniable. Standing there, she understood it was now or never. This was a call to engage wholeheartedly, right then and there. Feeling the uncertain rush of her own vulnerability, Maria steadied herself. The tension in the air felt as tangible as the heat of her desire for change. "I'll be the first to admit that there's risk in engaging with honesty. But what's at stake if we fail to try?" The time had come for Maria to either solidify her resolve or allow skepticism to ebb her light. In those fleeting seconds, she braced for impact, ready to face whatever direction this newfound journey would take her. Would she elevate her own voice and rise from the ashes of self-doubt? As Maria stood there, vulnerability pressing in on her like the weight of the world, she met the skeptic's gaze with renewed determination. Every word she had spoken hung in the air, vibrating with potential. Potential not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever felt diminished by their circumstances. It was a vital moment. The silence felt electrified, an opportunity to forge ahead or retreat. The choice loomed large, and she felt it resonate in her bones. "Failure is part of growth," she declared, channeling her anxieties into boldness. "Each misstep propels us toward the possibility of success." She could feel the weight of her past threatening to shadow her, but it was eclipsed by passion. The crowd responded, not with resistance, but with curiosity, heads tilted, eyes wide. That flicker of openness filled her with adrenaline. "Let's be real," she continued, her voice unwavering. "Not everyone here knows how to play the game, and that's okay. It's our individual stories, our authentic struggles that create a rich narrative." There was an urgency in her words. She wanted them to see her, really see her. Maria, the cleaner who had spent years lifting dirt, but was now polishing her own identity in front of them. The man who had challenged her, his expression slowly shifting, reflected a hint of contemplation. Was it possible he was beginning to reconsider, or was it just the collective energy buzzing in the room? Regardless, her clarity began to sharpen into focus. This was not just the defense of a personal narrative, it was about reshaping perceptions. In that intoxicating energy, she sensed her own transformation. She had never considered herself a speaker, let alone a catalyst for change. And yet here she was. With each word, she felt the old labels and limitations shatter. Maria was more than her past. Somehow, she was morphing into an agent of her future. "Every struggle is valid," she urged, passion surging in her veins. "From the boardroom to the basement, we all hold equal weight in this dialogue. Our stories have the power to unearth hidden truths, both personal and collective, but only if we dare to share them." Suddenly, the crowd wasn't just an audience, they were a living entity, stirring and grappling with her ideas. Maria recognized that she had touched a nerve, but could she carry this momentum forward? She felt a deepening swell of possibility. What if she dared to propose a more open dialogue, a space where others could express their struggles alongside hers? She was no longer just advocating for herself, but for everyone who had ever felt voiceless. The skeptic cleared his throat, preparing to interject, his demeanor softening. "What you're suggesting sounds idealistic," he began, but she sensed a shift in his tone, a hint of curiosity rather than confrontation. "I'm not asking for idealism," she replied, her heart racing with every beat. "I'm advocating for truth.
It's messy, imperfect, but it's real. Isn't that what we seek? Maria glanced around, absorbing the silent agreement slowly sparking among the audience. A group that had once felt distant now appeared to lean toward her, a subtle mirror reflecting her own awakening. Can our experiences reshape the narratives we tell? She posed, each word fertile with potential. What if we began to tell our stories with empathy, knowing that struggling is a shared experience, not a solitary battle? In that instant, she saw her path crystallize. She was prepared to build a bridge, a connection where none existed. It was risky territory. Doubt still loomed, waiting to pounce. Yet Maria had touched something raw and real. But just as certainty began to unfurl, a sudden voice cut through. The skeptic, now dressed in a new shade of intrigue, dared to challenge. But how do we move beyond mere words? As his question clanged against her resolve, Maria felt the stirring of her own fears rise again, a familiar ghost haunting her confidence. But this time, she wasn't ready to succumb. The real test, she understood, would be to dive deeper into this intricate dance, not only defending her territory, but also redefining it. Could she take vulnerability to the next level and pivot towards action? In that moment, standing between the pull of expectation and the push of progress, Maria felt her heart race at the brink of her own evolution. Would this spark transform into a movement she had only dreamed of? The stage was set, and as every thought coalesced into purpose, she readied herself to respond, the urgency reigniting within her. This was no longer just about words. It was time to present a tangible vision for continued growth. Maria took a moment to anchor herself in the energy of the room, sensing the collective breath held in anticipation. This was her moment to not only speak, but to catalyze action, to move beyond words into a realm where her vision could become a reality. "Here's what we can do," she articulated, each word deliberate and empowering. "Let's establish a series of workshops, sessions where we engage with one another, where those of us who have felt marginalized can share our stories alongside those who have achieved great success. Because true understanding breeds compassion, and compassion fuels change." The crowd leaned in, curiosity igniting as murmurs of interest began to ripple through them. Maria could feel her vision taking root, nourished by the flickers of intrigue reflected in their eyes. This wasn't just an abstract idea. It was a frame for their connection, a blueprint for genuine engagement. Across both divides of privilege and struggle, I envision a platform where success is redefined, she pressed on, her voice gaining strength. One that showcases our collective humanity rather than separating us by wealth or status. Let's break down the barriers of perception. Let's host discussions that invite everyone, rich or poor, to unpack their experiences. Through shared narratives, we could forge a path toward collaboration that is unprecedented. The man who had questioned her moments ago looked contemplative instead of dismissive now. He seemed to grapple with the depth of her proposal, the initial skepticism dissolving into curiosity. Light laughter and gentle agreement filled the room, a collective shift steering them towards possibility. Workshops offer more than dialogue. They offer empowerment. With every story told, we illuminate the nuances of our journeys, Maria continued, buoyed by the momentum gathering in the air. Imagine what we can accomplish together if we open ourselves to one another, to be truly seen and to witness the truths that rise from compassion and empathy. She could see Javier standing at the edge of the crowd, his pride beaming as he encouraged her with silent support. It was a powerful affirmation that ignited her conviction. This was not merely a performance for her. It was the possibility for every single person present to redefine their relationship with experience and success. Let's also integrate mentorship into these workshops. Let's guide one another. The wisdom of success should be accessible to all, Maria proposed, and ideas meeting vision crossing her thoughts. When we engage cross-generationally, we enrich our experiences and nurture future leaders who understand that economic status doesn't dictate worth. Together, we build a community where the cracks we once saw as weaknesses become sources of collective strength. Every soul before her began to nod, and the atmosphere sparkled with the palpable excitement of potential change. She felt the doubts that had once choked her aspirations begin to lift, replaced with a confidence fortified by the promise of concrete action. The skeptic raised his hand, and this time she welcomed his interjection. "How do we measure the success of these workshops?" he asked. "How do we ensure that this isn't just another conversation that ends in the void of rhetoric?" Maria paused, momentarily catching her breath. This was her moment to ground her vision in tangible metrics. "That's an important question," she replied, her heart thrumming. "Through tangible outcomes. We should collect feedback, track participation rates, highlight success stories, and celebrate progress throughout the process. We could create a report that documents our growth both collectively and individually, so we can share it with the broader community." A wave of resolute whispers surged through the audience. Feedback loops were forms of accountability, and they resonated deeply within professional cultures. "I want this to transcend our individual narratives. Let's amplify our voices and let the world know that together we are more resilient than apart," Maria concluded, the clarity of purpose glistening in her eyes. "This is a call to action, not just for me, but for all of us. Let's build something that fulfills the promise of connection and understanding, redefining the narrative of success." The applause began softly, but crescendoed into raucous enthusiasm. As she stood there, Maria embraced the moment of triumph, a blend of exultation and incredulous disbelief coursing through her body. She had taken her voice from the margins, transforming it into a wellspring of action. Now, she was no longer simply Maria, the humble cleaner. Through her journey, she remained steadfastly rooted in her origins, while expanding her vision far beyond the horizon she once thought impossible. She had accomplished something remarkable. She had gained recognition not just as a voice, but as a leader catalyzing change. With a newfound confidence and clarity, Maria stepped off the makeshift podium and was met with warmly confiding gestures from her peers, affirming her place in this evolving dialogue. The applause had not faded, it echoed within her soul, a reminder that she had proven her worth and reclaimed her narrative against all odds. As the evening unfolded, she glanced around at the faces of those who had once gleamed with dismissal, witnessing the change in their expressions, now marked with respect. She had conquered more than an event. She had confronted the doubts swirling in her heart and emerged more vibrant than ever. In that moment of undeniable fulfillment, Maria looked to the future with the certainty that she was now better equipped not only to share her story, but to build a community where every voice mattered. It was the beginning of an uncharted journey, grounded in trust, dialogue, and ultimately progress. As Maria stepped out into the crisp evening air, she felt the weight of her transformation anchoring her firmly to the ground. "I am here and I matter," she thought, knowing she had crossed a threshold. With each determined step forward, she understood her purpose: to elevate not just her story, but to carry the light of countless others forward on this journey together. Looking ahead, she knew this was just the beginning. Her commitment to initiating real change and forging deep connections had just begun, and with it, the pursuit of a future filled with shared stories and collective resilience had been set into motion. Now it's your turn to embrace your journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Seriously, it makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Your thoughts matter. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Together, we can inspire transformation and celebrate every story.